Welcome to season 2, episode 2 of On Air by Yoga for First Responders. I'm Eric Brenneman, one of the hosts of the show. This week we have a crossover episode. That's right, a crossover episode where Olivia is actually a guest on a podcast from somebody who went through our instructor school. The podcast is called First Responder Families Podcast. Olivia and Ivona have a wide-ranging conversation. You'll hear Ivana's introduction shortly after our episode begins. Your training begins now.
Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
Hello, listeners of First Responder Families podcast. We are here with a new inspirational conversation, and I have here Olivia Mead, and she is, in my eyes, a pioneer in bringing yoga to first responders in spite of misconceptions about yoga. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you, Ivona. I'm so happy to be here with you and get to talk with you again. This is always my favorite thing to do and thing to talk about.
And listeners are for a great treat because listening to you, Olivia, always inspires me and just brings that passion to helping those who are in front lines. You know, it brings up alive in me as well.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah. I can imagine that your journey in bringing yoga to first responders has not been free of obstacles. So
Right.
I wonder how it all began, like the aha moment when you realize that first responders need yoga, especially the original intention and what yoga can offer to people.
Yeah, that's a great question. What immediately comes to mind are two moments. One I was not conscious of in the moment, and the other, I remember like that aha.
Ah.
So the first thing that happened that probably I kind of realized several years later was something that changed something inside me was I was living in New York City when 9/11 happened. So I was there and I was going to school and I was going to school a block away from a fire station in Midtown Manhattan. And, FDNY is New York's bravest, right? They're well known, they know it too, especially in Midtown where all the theaters are, right? And so they always have the bay doors open. They're sitting on their trucks, they're taking pictures with the public, and it's all in an awesome way. And so I would always walk by them to get to my school. And I was giving them high fives every day. They gave me a patch. Like we just saw each other every day. It was really cool. And they did that for all of us as we walked by. And so 9/11 happened. And, of course, I know this podcast isn't about this, but I will say that talk about resiliency, right? Talk about post-traumatic growth. That city and the people in the city like just became stronger because of it. And everyone loved each other on the streets. Like if you dropped your wallet, it wasn't stolen, it was given back to you. Like, just beautiful things were happening. And I also thought I was going to die. Like that day, I was like, okay, this is hit number one, they're about to bomb the whole city, right? Like,
Mm.
and of course, and back in that day, cell phones were just starting, so I could, and the towers were down, so I couldn't get anyone on my cell phone. I couldn't reach anyone via payphone, so I wasn't, I couldn't get a hold of anyone on my family. I thought, okay, the shoe's gonna drop, the other shoe's gonna drop, and I'm dead, and so
Yeah.
but also as the weeks went on, the love, So when we finally did go back to school, so I was supposed to start a week later. I don't think school was delayed. I can't recall, but I know the first few weeks were basically group therapy, for all of us.
Hmm.
But as I walked by that fire station that I always walk by, the people that I was high-fiving and saying hello to were now pictures on a sandwich board of those that were lost.
Hmm.
And I also remember kind of looking at it, looking up, seeing a firefighter who wasn't lost in it and like gave him a hug. And, he gave me a hug and we just moved on.
Yeah.
So I think a seed was planted then that didn't come to fruition till later. And then later, I was living in Los Angeles. I had been teaching yoga for 10 years already in studios and gyms, and I was so sick of the commercialized yoga. I really wanted to teach its true lessons. And the feedback on my classes was, what outfit is she wearing? What playlist does she have? Do we like her playlist? And I was just so sick of, I was teaching yoga in Beverly Hills. Like it was probably the epitome of where that attitude's going to happen. And I was like, I gotta teach someone else, something else, And I wanted to focus on veterans and military because at that time the awareness of suicide and post-traumatic stress in that population was increasing, right? They were doing a better job of showing the population how much stress the military community has. So I went to a training so I could specialize in that. And then this is an important point, is that you can't just jump in and teach a population you have no understanding of the culture, or even if you do know the culture, how do I bring this particular piece to this culture, right? It requires training, like anything that you're going to specialize in, right? That's why people get their master's and their doctorate. So I I continued my training to know more about post-traumatic stress, know more about military and the veteran population. And I started teaching in VAs. So I was teaching those who have diagnosed post-traumatic stress, who are having inpatient programs to help them with substance abuse or post-traumatic stress. And I was teaching yoga there. I was also teaching some active military as well. So the aha moment for first responders
Mhm.
was I was interning at a yoga magazine in Los Angeles, and the publisher asked me if I would do a piece on my work with veterans. So I was sitting in the car. I had this little 1996 Mazda Miata, and I'm sitting in my car, and I called my mom kind of talking to her about what am I going to do this piece about? This is one of my first big writing pieces, et cetera, et cetera. And at that moment, a fire truck went by, with lights and sirens. And I said to my mom, wait a second, there's a fire truck. Hold on, I can't hear you. And when the fire truck left, she's like, what about first responders? Why
Uh-huh.
don't you teach your work for first responders? And I was like, oh my God. I fell into the trap that we all fall into of I'll call 911 and they'll be there, they'll fix it, and then they'll leave. And I don't think about them again. And
Mhm.
that they're real people and that they have families. And I was like, oh my God, it was like this feeling of aha and also embarrassment that I like wasn't thinking about this population. And turns out no one else was either, because when I Googled yoga for first responders, because like, well, just like with veterans and military, I got to get trained, right?
Yes,
There
yes,
was nothing. There
yeah.
was nothing. There are a lot of yoga programs to be trained to teach veterans and military, none at that time for first responders. And I was still in my car because I was Googling this on my phone, and I was like, okay, well, I can't ignore this now. Like, this is the calling, right? So literally say this all happened within 20 minutes. I then on my phone found an email for Los Angeles Fire Department and I was like, what about yoga? You know,
Mm,
drove home. By the time I got home, I had an email back from their behavioral health department saying, we've kind of wanted to do this, but we don't know how we're going to introduce
mm,
this, what do you call it, stigmatized thing, yoga,
yeah.
to this alpha population. And I was like, well, let me give me a try because I've been teaching vets and military. I also tend to teach very militant anyway. Um, so let me see what I can do. And so that was the beginning of this whole thing.
Oh. It gives me chills, Olivia, really, truly. Just all those different seeds planted, for you, even you getting just the original certificate and love for yoga. I know that you were trained in India, and plus all these different things transpire that you are brave enough to go from Google search, where it gives you zero answers, to let me figure out how I can bring it to the toughest, the most high performance or active population that we know. Wow.
Exactly, exactly. It was, I mean, I can't believe I was ballsy enough to do it. I'm like, wow, who was that? Okay, you know. But it
No,
was almost like a calling, you
the
know. It's
calling
like,
is calling,
yeah,
like the purpose matched, your skills and your expertise and your willingness to learn about
yeah,
population, like first
yeah. And it
responders.
it didn't feel like a choice of should I or should I not do this. It was just a yes, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So, how did you figure out to quote to quote like sell it, or get buy-ins from first responders? How do you get them to be interested in yoga?
Yeah, so I would say nowadays the what I would always say is the science and the research,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to BS anyone, and also the numbers don't lie. So if I'm telling you, look at all these studies that show this dramatic decrease in post-traumatic stress when you do not just yoga, yoga in general does it, our program does even more, and it's specifically for first responders. So
Yeah.
if I show that to someone and then they still say no, they have to sleep at night with that. You know
Mm,
what I mean? That's their choice.
right.
But what we're supplying is hard data and research that shows we have an answer to this problem.
Mhm.
So that nowadays, that's what I would say. Originally, back in the day before we had all this research, when I was still doing it LAFD and,
Mhm.
I think it was my delivery, right? I wasn't coming in with malas and essential oils. And by the way, everyone, I'm not against those things personally.
Mhm.
I love oils. I love malas. I love all of that. I do my whole thing. But this isn't yoga for Olivia. This is yoga for first responders, right? And
Yeah.
also, all of those adjunct tools, right? All of those great supportive tools of the malas and the oils. Those are supportive tools. They are not yoga. And I
Mm,
want to make that clear, right? So
mhm.
if you want to use a mala to count your repetitions, which is what it's for, by the way, mala beads are literally to be able to count repetitions of a phrase in your head.
Mhm.
It's a tool, right? It's not the yoga. Essential oil, flower essences, those are tools, they're not yoga. So I'm not putting them down, but I also need to not bring anything in that's going to distract us from the
Right.
purpose,
Yeah.
right? So just want to make that clear that I'm not against those things, but it's
Mhm.
just not serving our purpose, right? So when they saw, and I told them, hey, we're not going to turn the lights off and, dance around. Like this
Mm,
is actual training. So it was my delivery. I told them why we were doing it, how we were doing it. And then it started to work for them, right? They started to feel it and then they started to talk. And that's when LAPD found out what we were doing and asked if I would come in and teach some stuff for them too. So the magic was the delivery was tactical and practical. And
Mm-hmm.
then as time went on and I leaned on other research, we got our own research, then I can lead with that in combination with our delivery. And you know this because you've come to our training and
Yes.
you know we're we're not only training you in what, right, but in how you deliver it because that is part of the secret sauce for buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just to really embody what is that true meaning for of yoga, not the
Yeah.
cultural misconception. And what is the true origin of yoga and what are
Yeah.
the misconceptions that
Yeah, absolutely. So the authentic intention, the original intention, why this yoga training came to be was to master the mind, to have a training to master your mind and optimize the functioning of your entire system, your mind, body, and nervous system. Let's get this thing to its top level of functioning. And our most powerful tool, which is our mind, if it's not trained, it can turn against us. It's like having this giant a big dog or whatever that like if you don't train it it's going to be destructive, right? So we train it, and then it's the original population that used it was the warrior class because they needed to have there's only so much you can do with brute strength. After that, there has to be an edge, and that edge is a mental and neurological edge. So at the end of the day, yoga is a mental and neurological training system. And we use the physical part to get into the mind and body. And the physical part does have benefit, we do get benefit physically, which of course is valuable. But what has happened through the years is that physical benefit took the stage, right? It was the shining star rather than the mental and neurological part. And that's kind of typical because this physical thing we can see, we can touch it, we can measure it, and it's what we identify with most easily, right? We identify with what we look like. And if I said, "Who are you?" you would say, "I'm a woman. I have brown hair. I have," you would literally describe yourself physically. And so that took the driver's seat and the benefits physically started to, go higher and higher on the priority list of practicing yoga. And then in the Western culture nowadays, it's very commercialized and, all of accoutrement that goes with it, right? The pants and the mats and all that stuff
yeah.
and get a cute little body and all of this stuff. And
Mhm.
it's it sells. It's yoga is $1 billion, multi-billion dollar business because they are selling to someone's ego.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
not going to stop because it's what brings money in.
Mhm.
And then, of course, by moving your body, if you had no idea what yoga's for and you're going to these yoga studios and you're moving your body, of course you're going to feel good because moving your body
Yeah.
does feel good, right? And it does, it does make changes. So that's why people are like, yeah, yoga feels so good. They're only scratching the
Yeah.
surface,
Yes.
what could really, really,
Mhm.
so, um, the, so the marketing is going to go to the folks who are going to pay money. And
Mhm.
when I ask, these are other people's words, not mine. When I ask them, who do you think yoga's for? You're not going to hurt my feelings. They'll say soccer moms, hippies, white
Mhm.
people, women with lots of money. And that's true because one yoga class is like $30 to $40, nowadays. And again, that's a whole other thing. I'm not saying yoga studios are sitting there charging an astronomical amount because they just feel like it. No, nowadays they got to rent the studio. They have to make the studio cute. They have to have so this is just normal stuff. But unfortunately, it's isolating people from this very necessary training for being a human, just in general, because life is stressful regardless.
Yeah.
Then, did I just freeze? Hold on one second. Let me come back there. Okay, I'm back.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And 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 so then beyond just regular humans should be doing this work, then you take folks who are seeing unnatural things every day. There are some people wired to be first responders, and thank God,
Mhm.
but you are not biologically or neurologically wired to see those things. It's not natural. And
Agree.
maybe you have the mindset to say, I'm going to step up and do it. I'm going to step up and work on saving lives. It's still not natural for your brain to see. And therefore, you, in order to survive, let alone thrive,
Right.
you must have additional training for the worst of the worst. I mean,
Mhm.
you can't go into that
Yeah,
profession without the additional training of the horribleness you're going to see.
absolutely.
It's
Hmm.
and that's why we're seeing all these horrible stress-based health issues,
Yeah.
you know?
And Olivia, as you are sharing this, I imagine that because there is a missing piece of training of the for the first responders, then they'll find a way to FHE health, for the
Yes.
actually already like inpatient treatment of different symptoms, including
Yeah,
PTSD, substance use disorder, and what we are finding out that they have adapted to these supernatural conditions. They are not
right,
natural. They
right.
adapted, but it doesn't mean that they processed what they were
Oh, right.
adapted
Yes.
to,
In
right?
fact, I might say they maladapted to them,
Yeah,
you
even
know?
accurate word, they think
Right.
that they adapted, but because of nervous system collapse, right? That they
Yeah.
they actually had to um get help. Yeah.
Exactly. And here's the thing too about like, you know, the support on the other end, which you guys provide. And then what we're trying to do is proactive tools on before they have to come to you. Now, let's say it's still tough. So let's say they do train, they do take our training and they apply it.
Mhm.
It's still tough, right? But my hope is that when they have these tools and they have the neuroplasticity for resilience because they've consistently practiced the training we've offered, let's say they're like, you know what, I do need to go to FHE. This was too rough or whatever.
Mhm.
They'll be able to take use of what you guys do more efficiently and effectively and get back on the job and back,
Yeah.
thriving and post-traumatic growth.
Yeah,
Um,
Olivia, and I see it also the other way. We are working hard, to let our patients and even families of our first responders to know that there is such a thing like yoga for first responders, and it's more than
yeah,
just yoga. It's
right.
your training of your mind to
Yeah.
process stress on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and it's never too late. So if you're hearing this and you're like, "Oh man, I'm at the end of my career. My partner's at the end of their career. Too bad they didn't have this." It is never too late to rewire your brain. You will start to feel the difference immediately. Yeah. And the other thing I want to make sure people really think of it as brushing your teeth. It's not like, oh, I'm going to hit up a yoga class, once a month or whatever. No, it has to be consistent. Now, consistency goes up and down and up and down, right? So, but if you just keep going towards it, so say you're on vacation and you don't do your yoga for a week, okay, that's fine. You've been so consistent before that, it carries through. Maybe you have a lot of time to do 45-minute classes every day for a week, but then the next day it's only 5 minutes of breath work. It doesn't matter as long as you keep practicing going back to it. So I want everyone to think of this as a new habit, a new training, not just, oh, let me jump in a yoga class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I testify to it because since I took your training and using your online on demand, I
Yes. Yeah.
found the classes, between 45 minutes and 3 minutes. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
I have two small children, and I just sometimes don't have time. But I agree with you. The brain just needs consistency, whether
Mhm.
it's 3 minutes or it is 45 minutes, whether it's a neurological reset or it is movement or it is cognitive reframe, it's all the same neural pathway. Yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. The brain needs to know, oh, I have this to go back to. I have this to go back to. And
Uh-huh.
it's almost like I think of it as like my anchor or my partner. Okay, this is a hard moment. I have I have something to go back to. I know. Because you know when things hit you and they're hard, like I had a hard day last week.
Mhm.
And I just got in my car and I was like I could, first of all, it's awareness. I knew
Yes.
that I was not grounded because I was sweating, and I was like short of breath sitting in my car. And I was like, okay, this is what's happening. A is my nervous system does not feel grounded.
Mm-hmm.
I have tools. I have tools. That's okay. Without that, you spiral because you feel like, oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? What do I do? It's almost like you can grab on to
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
You
yeah.
grab onto your breath. So, I sort of talked it out loud in the car. I did my breathing. I used all the tools that I've consistently practiced when I quote unquote didn't need them, so that when I did need them, it was automatic.
Mhm. Yeah, but perfectly described, like how consistency can really be a great resource in the time of crisis or, really intense dysregulation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And like you said with on demand, and that's why we made it. So it's an app, and I'll make sure you get links and
Mhm.
codes,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, because we made it so people could have this in their pocket,
Yeah.
literally on their
I,
phone.
I swear by it because, I am considering myself a responder to people in crisis.
Yeah.
I'm far from the first responder, but I really relate to your app um, sometimes more than other meditation apps because I
Mhm.
just need something relatable. I don't need any music, I don't need any soft voice. I just need to regulate my nervous system here and now. Hmm.
And you know what? And everyone's different, but I'm like you where when I need support, I get annoyed by like soft voices and soft music because I'm like in a heightened state. And
Hmm.
it reminds me of when I did one of the firefighter trainings I would do. One of our instructors, who was a friend of Eric's, and they were on the same department, but he said if you start to freak out in the burn tower, you can't take your mask off. And
Yeah.
sometimes that happens without your even control. And I mean, that you will die.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
said, so if you're freaking out, I'm going to grab your head and I'm going to put you mask to mask with me and I'm going to look in your eyes and I'm literally going to yell at you so that you get out of your spiral and back to where reality.
Hmm.
So he's not petting your head saying it's going to be okay. No, he's grabbing your face and he's like, come back to reality, come back to the moment. And that's almost like how we teach is we're just direct, breathe in, breathe out, count to three, because we regulating your nervous system does not have to equate to a spa, a day at the spa. You
Mhm.
know,
Absolutely.
it is training. And exactly, it's like I know that I press this button and I'll have 3 minutes to train me to get back, in the
Mhm.
moment and do the job I need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't need to be relaxed if you are on the job and you are dysregulated.
Yeah.
It's not about getting into some sort of relaxed state, which brings me into what I learned from your training is the flow state and
Oh,
how,
yeah.
how really we function, but also perform the best. How would you define what the flow state
Flow
is?
state, we love to talk about. It's so cool. And some people may recognize it as called in the zone or being in the pocket, right? And all of us have experienced this because it's not always when you're doing high performance. You could be talking to someone you love, and all of a sudden it's 3 hours later and you didn't even realize 3 hours went by, right?
Yes.
It's it's the ultimate state of mindfulness. So flow is not just a feeling. Being in flow in the zone is actually something that happens in the brain.
Mhm.
It's you are performing at your highest level and it feels good and it feels easy.
Mhm.
And so they started to, folks started to research flow state, how people get in it, what is required for it. And a couple things are true. There are four, like in the cycle of flow, there are four areas, right? And each of those areas are required in order to get into the flow state. So those areas, and you can think of this like if you sit down, people have to sit down and do homework or do work, right? You can kind of notice these parts of the cycle. So there's the struggle, right? Where it doesn't feel good. All right, I got to sit down and do this. I got to get into
Yeah.
it, right? Then there's the release where you kind of let go of resisting doing this hard work. And that's what gets you into flow. Now, flow, although it feels good, it is taxing because you're working at a really high state. So you
Mhm.
love it, it feels great. But again, it is taxing. So you can only be in the flow state for a certain amount of time. I know for me that my flow state is about 3 hours because I'll hit a wall creatively
Mhm.
and I'll be like, I'm done. What time is it? And it's literally 3 hours after I started, right? So I know that's my like sweet spot. And then the last part is recovery.
Mhm.
Because taxing, you have to recover. You know, high performing athletes recover more than they are doing their high performance. You know, that's like a boop, like a stint, you know, someone who's doing a ski jump or whatever.
Yeah.
The rest of the time they're recovering. I mean, you see this if you watch the Olympics, the divers, this or that, they do a dive and then they're in the pool and they're massaging and they're recovering from that. So, but normal society does not uh, promote recovery
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
or
Hmm. And that's
and so yeah, go ahead.
That's why also your protocol, your yoga for first responders protocol, uh, contains three ingredients, so three aspects, but the one is recovery. It's that
Right.
neuro
Yeah.
reset. Would you be kind to talk a little bit about those three ingredients and how it makes how it's really practical for the
Yeah.
first responder for work, but also for their life,
Yeah,
after.
it's for everyone. We can apply all of this to any of us, you
Mm.
know. And so yeah, so basically, you know, another important thing to know about yoga is that it does improve your performance. And it does improve your performance because it is a training tool for flow. And that's not my words. Those are those who research flow say flow or yoga is a flow inducing activity
Mhm.
because the flow state goes through the same cycle, or yoga goes through the same cycle as the flow state. And so our protocol is rooted in traditional hatha yoga. And traditional hatha yoga has the breath work, the
Mhm.
physical part, and then the recovery part. Now, in westernized yoga, the breath, if addressed at all, is minute. Your teacher might say, don't forget to breathe, which is insane because you're breathing regardless.
Yeah.
And the physical part takes 99% of the class.
Mhm.
And then the shavasana at the end that people do is like 2 minutes of just lie down. Okay. Now again, there's absolutely no benefit to that because after moving the body for so long, it's easier to rest and be still. So a lot of folks, you know, will maybe fall asleep or feel relaxed there, and that's awesome. But 2 minutes of just laying down without any direction for your nervous system is not as effective as it could be. So what we did is we made it a little bit more equal. You know, we took the pieces of the pie and evened them out a little bit more, where breath work is the foundation. Where
I love
we
it.
Yeah, we're manipulating our breath pattern the whole time. And then the physical part is just one of the next pillar. It's not necessarily the shining star, it's the next pillar.
Mhm.
And then the neuro reset is a guided tool. So some may call it meditation or whatever you want to call it, but here's the thing. To truly practice meditation, you need an object of focus. It's not just sit and close your eyes and clear your mind. That's impossible. It is saying, here's the focus, watch when your mind leaves the focus and bring it back. The practice of mindfulness and meditation is the practice of bringing the mind back when it wanders, because it will wander. So some traditional practices are watching a candle flame, just watching it and
Mhm.
observing it. Notice when your mind wanders back to the candle flame. Another one is repeating a phrase to yourself.
Mhm.
It's called mantra, which means mind tool. It is a tool to focus the mind, right? So that's why just laying down is fine, because laying down is chilling out. But to truly be in meditation and reset your nervous system, you need an object of focus. So we give um, techniques, counting down from a certain number,
Mhm.
thinking about this, like, whatever we do, we're giving you a technique
Yeah.
to focus the mind on something so then you can notice if and when it wanders and you can bring it back.
Mhm.
And then we allow stillness at the end. So we are trying to really emphasize that cycle of flow within the yoga class. And then it strengthens your brain's
We
now.
froze.
Oh,
We
I'm
froze
sorry.
for a second. No problem. We are back. Yeah.
So the opposite of flow is burnout. Okay. You cannot, when you are feeling compassion fatigue or burnout, it's because you are not getting the focus that you need to do in an intense situation. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
it's you're showing up relaxed and not relaxed in the good way. You're showing up hypo vigilant, right? You cannot get the fire under your butt to
Yeah.
get in here. That's burnout. And so if you're experiencing burnout, the brain can't get into the flow state.
And at the same time, it's not whoever is listening, whoever has experienced that, it's not completely your fault. It's
Oh, none
just,
of this is
yeah,
your,
yeah.
no, absolutely not.
And
Like,
you are just describing it that there is a solution, to this, and there's a prevention of burnout and
yeah, yeah.
amazing.
I've hit burnout myself in my work, and now I've studied why and to prevent myself from doing that again. No, none of this is anyone's fault. This is normal ways for your system to work. This is typical. Nothing is wrong with you. This is what happens when you keep punching your nervous system in the face and not giving it time to recover, you know?
Exactly.
So everything, even post-traumatic stress is normal. That's why I try to avoid the disorder thing. I know what it means by a disorder, but I don't want anyone to think that it means something's wrong with them. You can call it injury, you can call it whatever. But post-traumatic stress, and I've learned this when I was kind of dealing with a traumatic thing in my life, and I was talking to an expert in the field, and they told me that the symptoms of post-traumatic stress that I was experiencing are the nervous system's way of putting shit back together, because so in my situation, I went through a divorce and a separation, and I was completely financially dependent on my ex-husband. And he kind of left out of nowhere and cut me out of my finances. Those are my basic needs, right? So the reason it was traumatic was I have no income personally at that time. So it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How am I going to eat, right? Taken away in an instant, and it punched my nervous system, right? And so I'm having all these typical post-traumatic stress symptoms. And it's cool because I teach about this and I'm noticing it in myself. Like, whoa, I'm having horrible dreams and intrusive thoughts. I'm having panic attacks. I'm having all of these, symptoms. And so when I talked to her about it, she said, your nervous system is doing this to try to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me think about this in a dream so I can try to subconsciously figure it out. My nervous system is over here. I got to get this piece and this piece. It's kind of like if something breaks in your house, right? You got to sweep it up. You got to get the glass up. You got to put this, you got to vacuum, right?
Yeah.
So, and that lasts about 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And you can recover from it. And like clockwork, 6 to 8 weeks, although I was still in horrible stress going through this divorce and separation, those extreme symptoms started to subside after 6 to 8 weeks, right? It went from post-traumatic stress to, okay, this is what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
I think it's because of all the years of practicing and teaching this, my nervous system was able to return to regulation after dysregulation.
Yeah.
Now, if it continues after 6 or 8 weeks, then it's like, okay, this is an injury, like a broken bone, and I need to take some time off to really truly heal it. Put a cast on it, do some rehab on it, all of that stuff, right? And so I explain this because post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress injury is
Mhm.
no one's fault. And it's actually very normal and typical and part of your nervous system's, um, tools or abilities, you know, but you got to help it out, right? You got to
Mhm.
go to, like, if you have a broken leg, you got to go to the doctor. You got to put the cast on. You got to do all the stuff. And when it comes to a nervous system injury, we don't do that. I mean, imagine like a baseball player who hurt their shoulder and they just keep throwing pitches and then wonder why they're addicted to pain meds and they're mad all the time and they can't sleep. You are in pain. You are
Mhm.
injured. Stop playing. Go recoup, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. So none of this stuff should have any shame associated with it. It is very, very, very normal. We have just not been given the tools to heal.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. And also how important it is to reframe that PTSD, as a normal response of the nervous system to either chronic stress or some instant stress. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And-
absolutely. I know this is going to sound weird, but when you feel that, can you thank your nervous system? I like to do this all the time. Your nervous system isn't is and your body is always trying to protect you, right? It's always on your side, but it may not do it in the right way, right? But you have to thank it and be like, okay, thank you. I know you're trying to protect me right now.
Mhm.
Thank you. We're going to do X, Y, or Z, but don't make your nervous system or your body your enemy, right? It's trying to help you, and maybe it's the not the right way to help you. It's like my little toddler when she wants to, I kind of came in from being cold. And she's like, "Mom, are you cold?" And I said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, I help." And she gave me a kiss on my leg, and she was like, "Better?" Doesn't help me not being cold, right? But her intention was to support me. So it's the same thing with your nervous system. Its intention is to support you. You just have to guide it which way to go.
Yeah, beautiful. And in yoga training, we train our mind in awareness. And the awareness becomes aware of nervous system dysregulation. So
Right.
there's a more communication between you who is aware and you are just, yeah, you expressing gratitude to, okay, something is going on, thank you for
Mhm.
alerting me.
Correct.
I got
Yes.
you. I got you in a way. You can use the tools, and breath is always available.
That's perfect, Ivana, the way you said that, because that is yoga. That's yoga. True yoga philosophy is that there's the you experiencing the life, which they call ego. It's not ego that we think of like egotistical. No, ego is just the person. And then there's the awareness, the consciousness. And that's the one that is watching the ego. Like, when I started to have sweaty armpits the other day and I was like, whoa, look at what's happening. I'm having a response. And like you
Yeah.
said, the alarm goes off. It's alerting you to something.
Mhm.
And so that awareness, so in yoga, the true authentic philosophy of yoga is that we are trying to be more connected to our awareness than to the ego.
Mm.
That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And the ego is going to have this life experience. And if we can be aware enough to notice
Mhm.
rather than be living in the ego, we can then course correct and make decisions and guide, like they do with airplanes,
Yeah.
guide be the air traffic control of our own systems.
Yes. Yes, kind of the leader, the true conscious leader of all our channels, including ego, including our inheritance from our from previous generations, right?
Exactly, exactly. Like, oh my gosh, if anyone listening has kids, if you've watched Encanto, if anyone's watched Encanto, it's about, stopping and redirecting generational trauma. And it's really, really cool. But that's it. It's like what I love about at that movie, at the end of it, is she's finally aware of her grandmother's trauma so she can have compassion. And then the grandmother finally becomes aware, oh, I've put my trauma on you. So they're aware of each other and they can appreciate it and then, course correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's absolutely about that, which is really, really cool. I haven't ever even brought that part of it up before in an interview. So this is really cool.
Yes, and I'm very moved by it. It was just a few days ago when I watched the ending of it. So when you are bringing this up, it's just again, I really feel it in the heart how
Yeah.
they actually had understanding for each other, a grandmother with the granddaughter, and it's just beautiful and so relatable to all of us. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You can see it. Yeah, I think it's something that's very, very applicable. But that's the thing. When you start living in more of your awareness, you pick up on things like themes like that in a movie or this or that. Like everything starts talking to you on a different level. And yes, it does start with yoga because you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to be more aware. No, that's not how it works. Your ego is too strong. You have to train your awareness. So we train for it on the yoga mat so that it can be applied off of the yoga mat.
Yeah, yeah. And I compare the time on yoga mat, even 15 minutes a day, you know, is can make that magic, increase that awareness, change direction of life, communicate, interact with loved ones differently. And I
100.
want to compare it to how much time, including me, I can spend on like watching Netflix, right? Or just doing something, being on the phone
Yeah.
and much more time we spend mindlessly, and this takes that discipline and put it into your schedule, but
Mhm.
it does a really magic in the brain,
Yeah.
so
Another thing I just kind of realized because I was about to tell you too that
mhm.
um, I like to do my breath work when I'm walking my dog.
Mm.
Because it's what else am I going to do when I'm walking my dog, And it's a thing I have to do. He's got to go out, right? So it's a great time to do it. You can also do a neuro reset while walking. You don't have to be lying down. You don't have to have your eyes closed. That has nothing to do with it because you may have to reset your nervous system in action, you know?
Mhm.
So it doesn't equate to nothing. You can do it lying down. That's totally great too, but try a neuro reset when you take your dog for a walk. Maybe even try it with the whole family.
Yeah.
If they all go for a walk,
Mhm.
but you can apply it in different places like that. When I say practice on the yoga mat, I'm kind of talking theoretically or
Yeah.
call it like metaphorically
Mhm.
because your yoga mat could be walking your dog, your yoga mat could be just sitting at your desk doing 3 minutes of moving your spine and breathing. So when I say yoga mat, I'm basically meaning training space.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. And how I would like to land, if you don't mind, and we will probably have to do the whole episode just on it, Me as
Yeah,
a
sure. Let's do
yeah,
it.
as a relational therapist,
Mhm.
working with the couples for years, training in couples therapy, I have always been really drawn into understanding the couples. And no matter how much I'm trying to help the couple, to have a more connecting interaction, I always bump into one and only thing and that's when partner is dysregulated and only
Mhm.
depends on the other partner to regulate them, that doesn't go well for them. I don't know if I'm
No.
explaining it right. So, in other words, research always goes that first the person has to be self-regulated in order to
Right.
actually create some safety and connection with the other person. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why we as couples therapists, we are sometimes obligated to refer a couple to separately to their individual
Oh,
therapy. Yeah.
100%. I mean, again, like you said, this could be a whole episode because I mean, this is kind of goes into that codependence thing too, is that a couple are two individuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're dealing as an individual, you're dealing with so much of your own stuff. You can't take on the other person's stuff. You have to come together and then kind of move like this as life. And so step number one, whether for anything, there is not one thing that this is not true for. You must regulate yourself first.
Mm.
You cannot make a decision. Your brain, literally, and your coherence level is not in a place to make it. You will act impulsively. And that, again, that's not pointing a finger or putting anyone at fault. That is normal functioning. That when you are in an amygdala state, an amygdala hijack, when you are dysregulated,
Mm.
you are meant to survive, which means it may not be logical to the situation, right? So you're just metaphorically throwing punches and you don't know to who or to what. I just need to
Mhm.
be alive. That's happening even if you're sitting in the safety of your office, right? If you're dysregulated, you are still in that survival mode. So I don't care what situation it's for, you must be regulated first.
Mhm.
So, if both people in the couple have can recognize that, then the other person too can recognize when their partner is not regulated and this is not the time to approach them about whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully they have the tools to regulate themselves, but it's like, okay, this is not the time to poke at or bring up whatever. And that's when everyone loves to do it. Our egos love to, he's pissed off, I'm gonna piss him off more and that's what our egos like love.
Yes.
We can recognize dysregulation and give that space. And then if we feel dysregulated, step one is to regulate before
Mhm.
you do anything else. Don't even, same thing with children. If a toddler's having a tantrum, you don't try to explain crap to them at that point. Like they don't understand. They're literally in quite fight or flight. They don't know what's going on. You have to regulate first before you teach the lesson, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So when my daughter's upset over something that whatever, is
Mhm.
I just hold her. I'm like, can I just hold you?
Mhm.
And we just breathe. And then when she's calm, we can deal with the situation. So there is not one time when regulation first is not true.
Mhm. That's a beautiful landing, Olivia. There's really no one can dispute it. I
Yeah,
100% agree. And which leads me to really recognize you and honor you for not only this organization like Yoga for First Responders, but for the movement you're bringing to those who are really experiencing the high stress at their workplace. And then on the top of it, they have just day-to-day human stress.
that's the thing. I can't even imagine because life is stressful enough, you know?
Excel.
And so I think it's the recognition of that and being like, can we all just admit, like, hey, I have a really high stress job, no matter how tr much I try to fluff it off or whatever. And that means that I need to do this X training. So I need the time to do it. can we just talk and say that? Like I finally have to admit to people like at a certain point, I get overwhelmed with what I have to do or with people. And I literally tell my husband, I need a day at home to
Mhm.
just ground myself. And I felt bad about that at first, right? Like I feel bad. Like why? I even said to Eric, my husband, a former firefighter, I said, why am I the one that has to always, like work on my mental health? You just power through, And he's like, well, probably because I should be stopping and working on my,
Hmm.
mental health. I'm
Yes.
just like so aware of it or whatever. But again, let's just make it normalized instead of thinking that if you tell your partner, hey, I need 15 or 20 minutes, that's
Hmm.
whatever it's the stigma is. But let's just like make it a thing that we all need this kind of space.
Yeah. And how do you think is to actually do it first time and realizing that this is the way and it is normal. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be that way. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. This is totally normal, everyone. No one's a weirdo here, okay? Like let's
Yes.
just correct the problem,
Mhm.
which is adding the brushing the teeth, right? Like adding the hygiene to the nervous system, just like we take showers and brush our teeth. It's neurological hygiene. Just add that to the habit list.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, Olivia, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. What
Yeah.
you found and what you continue evolve with your amazing team. Thank you so much.
Well, it's fun to talk with you as always, Ivana. Thank you.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.